Hey WordNerds! So today I wanted to do something a little different. This is inspired by Alexa Dunn over on her channel on YouTube. She does a really fun video where she answers questions from Reddit, writing questions obviously. I will link her video down below so you can check that out as well. So these are all going to be read on my phone and it's the first time I'm seeing them. I think I'm just going to do the title of the question so that I don't have to actually like click on it and read extensively. So the first one is, what books do you think, if were not read by one, meant that he was not knowledgeable enough in the field of writing? Okay, so I'm guessing this question means like, what books do I need to read to be a writer? And I'm guessing this means like books on writing. I mean, I recommend it, but I don't think that I would ever be like, oh, you're not a writer clearly if you haven't read Stephen King's On Writing. It's not really necessary. I think the only thing that you really should be doing is reading a lot in general. Read a lot of the genre that you love. So I read a lot of fantasy. I read a lot of books about magic, which I absolutely love because I write books about magic, but I also try to read fiction out of my genre as well as nonfiction. So just read as widely as you possibly can and read as much as you can. And that is what improves your craft. I mean, books on writing are great. Stephen King's On Writing is actually the main book I recommend to people because the way it's laid out is very simple. His writing advice is very applicable, even if you're new to writing. I don't agree with some of it. He's got very strong stances on plotting a book, and that it makes you like, I can't remember his exact quote, but like, good writers don't plot, essentially, which I think is, excuse my French, complete bullshit. But I do really like the rest of his book, and so I always recommend that. Personally, I'm not actually really huge on books on writing and the craft of writing. I will flip through them. I have a few of them on my shelf, but I don't think it's mandatory. How do you stay focused and motivated? That's a great question, actually. One of the things I always do is have a schedule, and having a schedule has helped me tremendously. I am a very scatterbrained person, so especially if I'm working out of my home for the day, if I don't have a schedule and set an alarm on my phone, it doesn't get done. So I'll set an alarm after breakfast. So let's say I eat breakfast from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. my alarm goes off. I know it's time to get to work, and I have to end up being quite hard on myself because otherwise I'll just watch Netflix. So I guess that's not so much motivation as like kicking yourself in the butt and making sure you have a schedule and setting an alarm and not letting yourself have any excuses. And obviously that's for me because I work out of my home, but if you have a full-time 9-to-5 job, you come back, you know, put your kid to bed, let yourself have an hour to unwind in front of the TV, and then just write for half an hour, even 15 minutes. Set that alarm. And I really love the Pomodoro technique. It's like a certain amount of time that the timer is ticking for, and then it rings and you get a 5-minute break, and then you do another, I think it's 15 minutes, then you do another 15 minutes. And so that's been really helpful for discipline. And I think half the time motivation can often just be discipline. You need better discipline, at least for me. And sometimes motivation can be that you've fallen out of love with your story. That sometimes happens to me. In that case, I will try to rekindle the feelings I had when I first had the idea, I first had the inspiration. So maybe I'll go on my Pinterest board, or even if I had the idea when I was watching a Netflix series or reading a book, I'll just flip through that book or watch an episode of that series and kind of try to recreate at least a little spark of the excitement I had for that idea. Actually, usually what I do, and I really recommend this, is once you have an idea, sit on it for a little bit and let that idea grow and let it get really exciting until you're just chomping at the bit to write this story. And then I have less of a problem with motivation if I do that. I feel like this is so rambly. I don't know if this is gonna help anyone at all, but it's just literally just me reacting in real time to these questions. Calling all published writers, can you still make money? Yes, but not a lot of it. There's this false idea that writers no longer get advances at all. And I think this is simply not the case with traditional publishing. This is certainly not the case in my situation. I can only really say what happened in my situation and how, you know, the type of advances I got were always very middle of the road, on the high end of medium, if that makes sense. Although it may be true that the only money I see is the advance and I don't sell out that advance. I don't know. That remains to be seen. But the idea that writers, traditional writers, don't make advances anymore is just simply not true. This is a good one. It's not necessarily phrased as a question, but I'm going to answer it anyways. It says, writer's block that became a result of my mental breakdown, and I am working on becoming a writer again. A couple years before I had my son, I had what I think of as a mental breakdown. It was just a accumulation of my OCD and anxiety peaking and me not knowing how to deal with it. I wasn't on any medication. I had never seen a therapist before, and it just spiraled, essentially, is the correct word. And I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, it was awful. And I didn't do any writing in that time. And I think if you're going through something like that, it's not fair to pile on top of yourself the expectation that you should also be writing during something like that. And you don't have to be having a complete mental breakdown like I was to excuse yourself from writing. And I think it's really unfair that as creative people, we put this pressure on ourselves, because there's this often, I think, quite damaging idea that mental illness goes hand in hand with being a creative person, and so we should be able to work through our mental illness or utilize it to make art. And like, when I am having an OCD spiral or I'm having an anxiety attack, it stops me from creating my art. It doesn't like add to it and make it better. And I'm not saying that if your mental illness somehow does lend itself to your art. Like, I know I love Halsey. I know that she writes a lot of songs about her bipolar disorder, and that is, if that is what gets you through things, that is awesome. And I'm so happy for you that you can do that. But if you can't, then please don't put pressure on yourself or feel like you're doing it wrong, because there's no wrong way of being mentally ill, and that shouldn't be even anything that we have to worry about. Take care of yourself, please. If you need to take a break, take a break. Your writing is not going anywhere. Let's see. This isn't a question, but I want to touch on this because it bothers me. Sibling rivalry, a short story by a mediocre writer. Y'all, don't do this to yourself. Please, please, please. When I was a literary intern, I saw this all the time. People being like, I'm not a very good writer, but here's my 90,000 word manuscript. And I'm like, why, if you're not a good writer, do I want to read your 90,000 word manuscript? And it's not fair to tear yourself down before somebody even gets a look at your writing. And if you're doing that when you're sending out a query or when you're asking a question on Reddit, what are you saying to yourself in the privacy of your own brain? Please don't tear yourself down. People will do that enough for you, like just in life in general. Don't turn it inward on yourself. This is one I'm going to briefly touch on. I'm excited that my novel is coming together, but I need editing tips. I won't go into this too much, but if you are looking for editing tips, please do yourself a favor and go to Susan Dennard's website. And then I think you can just click on the writers section on her website, and she has a whole thing laid out for people looking to edit their manuscript, especially if you're doing it for the first time and it's overwhelming. Please, please go look at that. It has saved my life, actually numerous times, because I feel like every time I go and I start to edit a new manuscript, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing and I have a little panic session. So often I go to Susan's website and kind of just comfort myself, be like, okay, if I stray off the path and I don't know what the heck I'm doing, I can go back here and here's a roadmap for me. So yeah, strongly recommend that. And yeah, that's it for writing questions on Reddit. Let me know if you guys want me to do a round 2. Don't forget, Sunday, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, the WordNerds have our live chat, and we would love to see you there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.